Hey everybody, my name's Jack.
I'm Jake,
This is Live at 5.
and it is 5.
It is. It is 5. Look at that. Today's going to be a very fun and interesting episode because as you can see behind me, we have some very fun and interesting guitars. And if you're on Instagram, this is the only one you can see, so enjoy. So,
Well, they can see a bit of the other two.
I'm guessing Instagram, you're like here
Yeah, just about.
and here.
Yep, just about.
So I hope you like the outer bouts and wings of guitars because that's all you get. If you do watch on Instagram and after all this time, you have finally decided, you know what, I'd like to see more of what's going on. We are also. I've been combining words all day. Like all day I've been combining words. Earlier I said picked.
Mhm.
That meant packed and shipped. Picked. Which isn't wrong because technically I picked the item from inventory
Yes.
so that it could pack and ship it. So technically it was picked. Right?
Sure.
It was in a queue. I picked it. I shipped it, packed. I'm going to stop talking about it. Shipped it. What is shepped it? Shepped it? I shepped it. It's been shipped to Pennsylvania and Alabama. So, but anyways, if you'd like to watch on a wider format, we are also live on Facebook and YouTube. So please feel free to tune in there. You can get a full view of everything we're talking about.
And even me.
And even Jake. That's right, because you're not visible on Instagram, are you?
Nope.
You're just like the voice of Oz, just chilling and hanging out on Instagram.
Well, I mean, that's pretty accurate to me, even with camera or no camera.
Yeah, you are pretty terrifying.
Yes.
That's so, Danelectro guitars. They date. I'm screwing up all kinds of words today. You know what it is? I've been doing this no caffeine thing.
Uh-huh.
Well, lesser caffeine.
That
Like-
would be more accurate.
Like I'm drinking Liquid Death green tea.
Yes.
There's still caffeine here,
Yes, there is.
but it's not like I'm chugging 2 or 3 energy drinks a day. So I'm trying to control it a little bit because that day I ran off stage to find an item. I'm pretty sure I had 3 energy drinks that day. So that was
I counted at least 2.
it was a lot, and so I'm limiting myself. Some days I'm great. I go no caffeine,
Uh-huh.
and I'm gonna sleep by like 8:30 at night.
Yep.
Some days I'll have 2 caffeines. By 2 caffeines, I mean like multiple energy drinks. And I'm up to like 10 or 11. If I have coffee, I could have coffee a couple times a day.
Mhm.
And I'm not like wired, but I have noticed I do stay up a little bit longer than I used to. But I'm not like wired. I'm just awake. So I don't know. So I don't know how much caffeine is in Liquid Death green tea. Sorry, green guillotine. The fact that teen isn't spelled T-E-A-N-E, we're already off topic.
Yeah,
It's-
we have to do it at least once.
people have already turned away. They're like, anyways.
Anywho.
Today we're talking about Danelectro guitars. Danelectro started in 1947 by Nathan Daniel. Dan Electric. Whoa. Danelectro, however, is a very interesting story to Nathan Daniel. Nathan Daniel got his start by building amps for Epiphone.
Uh-huh.
He then started building amps for Sears. You know, Sears and Roebuck, Montgomery Ward, which were Airline and K?
Maybe.
Those company, you know, but like if
Yeah.
you wanted those, you know, remember like it wasn't Airline, I can see it right in my head, but you could get the Silvertone and Airline. And the Silvertone guitar, there was the one that had the amp built into the guitar case.
Yeah.
Super cool. I want one just to hang it on my wall.
I-
I'll never play it. We've had a couple of them come through here.
I
and I've
remember.
never bitten the bullet on them. It's a fun collector's thing.
I remember the Vox we had that had speaker built into the body.
Yeah, let's not talk about that abomination. Sorry, Vox. I mean, that wonderful, inventive piece of musical engineering.
Hey,
Well,
if we're talking.
so eventually Sears and Roebuck, Montgomery and Ward, they wanted to add all these guitars to the lineup. Nathan Daniel, single-handedly, for like, no one knows the exact number of years. Well, his family might. But Nathan Daniel single-handedly built every guitar that went into Sears. So as quick as he could make them, Sears would get them. and eventually they expanded and added more people to it. Well, in 66? Yep. In 1966, Nathan Daniel sold his company, Dan Electro, to the Music Corporation of America in 1966 for $6 million. That's how invested into guitar building he was. Well, Music Corporation of America took the company, they ran with it, they opened up a factory in New Jersey, they had roughly 500 employees, and then Sears eventually was like, no, we only want guitars built by Nathan Daniel.
Yeah.
We don't care if you're the Dan Electro company, we want the craftsmanship and quality from Nathan Daniel. It probably didn't even last 5 years. Dan Electro, after the sale of the company to the Music Corporation of America, closed its doors. So by 1970, early 70s, there was no Dan Electro. Just vanished. So it was around for almost 20 years. And then, or a little over 20 years, and then just gone. And 1997, enter Steve Rittinger, I'm not sure how to say his last name, buys the patent and the copyright for Dan Electro. It revives the company. Steve Rittinger is noted for creating one of the first ever digital guitar tuning pedals. He is responsible for the birth of Arian Effects, which is nothing hugely famous, but among collectors, good, very notable products. Gorilla amplifiers, and, fun fact, popularized the use of the fax machine in the United States. So this guy and his company resurrects Dan Electro in the late 90s.
With a fax machine.
Well, not with the fax machine. I mean, he probably used the fax machine to close the business deal at some point in time, but he resurrects the company. And then in NAMM, which NAMM show did he go to? 97. 96, he gets the company up and running. January 1997, he goes to NAMM, but all Dan Electro has is pedals.
Yeah.
And everyone at NAMM goes, where's the guitars? Why don't you have guitars? We want Dan Electro guitars. We saw Dan Electro was going to be at NAMM. We're excited. We wanted the guitars. So instead, NAMM 1998, they sell over 1,000 guitars at NAMM. In 98, not for a company who's had only recently been in existence again for maybe 2 years, sells 1,000 guitars at NAMM.
That's not bad.
Here's where it gets wild.
Okay.
In all of 98, Dan Electro sold 10,000 guitars. They've been a company for 2 years. And the rush, the excitement, the adrenaline, the pure chaos that everyone wanted a Dan Electro again. In 1998, Steve Rittinger claims that Dan Electro sold 10,000 guitars. Wild.
In 98.
In 1998.
For a company just starting to run again.
Yeah. And this is an interview I saw of him speaking. So if it's wrong, he's wrong. This is crazy. So, what makes Dan Electro stand out? From the very beginning of it all, they have a very retro feel and vibe to them. I'm also just now realizing, since we had that conversation about you not showing up on Instagram, that whenever I turned to look at you, everyone on Instagram is just like, Jack, what's over there?
What's over there is the chat. On my screen is you're facing chat.
I'm just talking to the chat.
Yes.
I'm chatting towards the chat.
Yes.
So, Dan Electro guitars. This is the 59 NOS Plus. The D, obviously, for Dan Electro. You have your stacked volume and tone knobs. But the signature things that make a Dan Electro, to me, will always be the lipstick pickups. Because any one of these guitars, all very different in look, shape, feel, model, color, everything. But they all have the high output lipstick pickups.
Yeah.
Very unique. Tool leather-esque. It's not leather, but it has the look and the feel of a tooled leather for the binding of the body. But everything about them screams retro. They use aluminum nuts, which is a little different from other companies, but the colors, the design, the aesthetic of it all. They're also responsible for Snark tuners. So if you own a Snark tuner, it's from Dan Electro.
They're great.
They're phenomenal tuners. Everything they have they have these little ones now that are like rechargeable. You don't have to mess around trying to find a battery anymore.
Oh,
Phenomenal. I think it's called the Snark Air.
all right.
Yeah. But when I look at this guitar specifically, you know, retro vibes, Cadillac, specifically 50s and 60s type era.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the wings on the guitar look like the fins from the back of the Hot Rough, you know, from like a Chevy Bel Air, the old Cadillacs, things like that. It looks like the fins on the back of the guitar, on the back of the cars. The colors scream hot rods, classic vehicles from the 50s and 60s. This is the vibe they're going for. A lot of companies have tried this over the years, but Danelectro is the only one that has made it who they are. It's their image. It's what everyone knows them for. They started in 1947. So why not call back to that era and make your brand that brand?
Yeah.
That's what it is. They've been super innovative. They don't use some of the most expensive parts and tone woods out there, but that's what helps make them what they are. They use usually mixtures of poplar and plywood and different things like that. They might have some spruce bodies, but it's still more or less the same across the board. You get the front and back, the leather-esque binding, the high output lipstick pickups. This one here is the Dano 67, I believe. It's the offset body. One volume, one tone. No stacked pickups or no stacked controls on this one. But there are some models they're more specifically known for over others. So if I were to grab this here, this one's the lefty version because we are actually all out of the righties. We have a couple on order. This is the Longhorn. This is one of the more flagship models from Danelectro. These have been featured in all types of recordings. Guitar virtuoso Joe Bonamassa, he's notable. He's noted for using one of these. Well, the right-handed version.
Same model.
Same model, but it's the Longhorn. Ironically, I realized the Longhorn shares the same abbreviation as left-handed, so we could just call this the LHLH. Yeah? No? Okay, whatever. It's, but it's this very similar thing. Oh, one cool thing to note on this is that to keep it true to the vintage aesthetic vibes of when these were around, this does still have the traditional bridge with the wooden piece in it. Stacked volume and tone knobs, high output lipstick pickups. Like I said, not much from Danelectro changes across the board, but it doesn't need to.
No.
They're not out here trying to reinvent the game. They're out here showing you what they were and what they always have been, and it does very well. They're always putting out new pedals based off of, you know, vintage era circuits and things like that. Some of their older pedals, like the mini ones, where they were all named after food. You remember that? They had the hash browns, the chili dog, like all those. There's the Cool Cat, the Dano, or the Danny O, I think is what it's called. But they had all kinds of these like mini pedals with plastic enclosures. Some of them get up to like a couple $100 now, but they're all pretty collectible things. So if you see any out there, go for them. They're fun, very cool pedals. The chorus pedal was called the Cool Cat. This here is the bass. It's either 56 or 65. I'm getting the numbers backwards. This is the bass 56. This is the classic Dano body. But you can see lipstick pickups, volume and tone, selector. Not much. Again, it doesn't really change much out of it. I think the biggest thing for Danelectro is just the shapes, the colors, but they all sound really good. They're phenomenal guitars. This one here is another 59 NOS. This one it's just in black sparkle. This is probably my favorite out of the bunch. Actually, that's not true. This is my second favorite out of the bunch. Danelectro does a great job with the black sparkle. It's one of my favorite finishes of theirs. They have the black sparkle baritone. Phenomenal guitar. But my ultimate favorite that we have in stock right now. This is new from Danelectro. This is the Triple Divine. Volume and tone, pickup selector, 3 lipstick pickups. Mm-hmm. This gorgeous red with nice double bound cream binding along the body. This guitar has a very vintage feel to it. This one makes me feel like I'm driving around a nice red Cadillac. This one pushes all the right buttons. So this is the one I would want from Danelectro. Actually, it's the one I might get from Danelectro. Like, it's vintage style tuners on the back. Like, this just screams vintage. They all do. They all give off that vibe, but this one a little more than the others. The Triple Divine has, like I said, the 3 pickups. This shape is called the Southern. So if you see that laying around from the other brands, C-shaped neck, stacked volume and tone. It is a maple neck. And the wood for the body, it's actually a combination of composite material and solid wood. Normally when we do the show, I think I've picked up everything for the most part by now. Normally I go a little bit more in detail, but it's kind of hard with Danelectro. As great and as innovative as they are, but also as traditional, so to speak, to their brand, to their name, there's not a lot of innovation there. When you start getting into some of the other models, like the EXTs, the Pluses, you get some like off-shaped bodies, offset-shaped bodies with, you know, angled dual lipstick pickups and things like the Sitar that we talked about a few weeks ago, and all kinds of and very interesting things like that. You'll start seeing more variances, but even those, I think even the Sitar still uses the lipstick pickups.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, they don't change from that. That's just what they are, and it's really cool. There is a history somewhere out there between Danelectro and that company Eastwood. Because if you look at, like, this is just what I've been told. I've never looked into this. But if you look at the two companies and how very similar all their builds are, plus the fact that, like, Eastwood's, they make all the airline guitars now, but they're just models called Airlines, they're not the airline company.
Yeah.
But you gotta think, like, Airline and Silvertone were like the two things way back in the day. So when Nathan Daniel was building guitars for Sears, I think Sears was Silvertone, and I think more forget the Sears and Roebuck and Montgomery Ward. I think they were doing the airline guitars. It was one of the way around. But whichever guitars Nathan Daniel was building, Airline's out there, right? So it's just one of those things where it's like, when those were your two places to get guitars.
Yeah.
You had to exchange things with each other, you know? So there's some correlation there, I've been told from a few different people, but I've never actually looked into what it is. So if you know, drop it in the comments, shoot us a message, come back and see me here on Saturday, and let's talk about it. Because I'm not here. I'm not here on Fridays. This show I give so much to this show that I'm just out all day Friday. I sleep till noon. Whatever. All right, this is the one a couple weeks ago when I ran off stage and I ended up grabbing that snare drum. This was the guitar I wish I had, like, wanted to grab. This was the one where I was like, oh no, I forgot, like, the Oddities episode.
Yeah.
Was the snare drum during the Oddities episode?
It was last week.
No. That was last week?
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah, because the drumhead thing was Saturday.
Oh yeah.
And so
it was last week.
Yes.
All right. I felt like a month ago. It's been a long week, everybody. You know what's so creative about this model number? The DBN 612. The double neck 612.
Mm-hmm.
WTP, sorry, for white pearl, because it's a nice white finish, but it's a little pearlescent in the middle. This guitar is, as you might be thinking, cool, very cool. This is, it's what I love about it the most is that it's not real heavy, so you could sit there, you know, put a nice guitar strap on it, and you could sit here for the whole night. Just crazy with this thing. It's phenomenal. I love it. The controls are real basic, super simple. I love it. You have your pickup selector, which is nice because you can go back and forth between your neck, bridge, or in the middle for both. Stacked volume and tone knobs, and then your simple switch to allow you to go back and forth between 12 or 6-string mode. That's it.
All right.
That's how. All right. That's how simple this guitar is. It's very cool. We have a couple of them in stock actually. So if this floats your boat, if that's what you might be looking for, it's a little bit bigger than the paddle for a boat, so maybe don't consider for that. You might end up a little lopsided. But yeah. So a little mini history lesson about Danelectro. View of what we have in stock here. What's funny though is this is my last point, and then we'll just wrap up the show.
All right.
We are a small, locally owned music store. Family owned,
Mhm.
local guitar shop. Well, music store. We carry a lot. Full service music store that carries Dan Electro.
Yeah.
That does well with Dan Electro.
Mhm.
The big deciding factor that ended up closing the doors for Dan Electro when they were owned by MCA back in the 70s, or late 70s, late 60s, early 70s. For the longest time, Dan Electro guitars and everything like that have only existed in the larger stores.
Yeah.
They were Sears, Montgomery Ward. Sears and Roebuck, Montgomery Ward. That's where they were. The owners of Dan Electro at the time, through MCA, wanted to take Dan Electro out of the big stores and into all the local shops.
Yeah.
And they ended up losing so much business during that process that's what closed their doors. So to know that that's the history, that's why Dan Electro closed their doors 50 years ago, to now seeing this huge selection of Dan Electro across the world
Mhm.
and locally owned music stores and small things like that is a very cool, very welcoming thing. So think about that. It's things you don't really think about. Certain brands, their significance to the industry plummeted when they started going to mass distribution to like major general stores, not just music stores. Other brands thrive very well in those categories. But most of your brands, most of your companies, most of your instruments and things and likewise, they have that lifeblood because they're in the local music stores, because they're in your local family-owned guitar shop. That's how you find out about them. You walk into the music store and you're like, what in the world is this? And then the next thing you know, you're like, what is this? And then you're just looking around. You're like, they make pedals? You know, like and that's how it starts. So I'm very thankful that Dan Electro was revived in the late 90s
Yep.
and brought back to life, and that we can carry their full service of instruments here at Island Music Company. So if Dan Electro is something you're into, whether it's the way they sound, the way they look, the way they feel, maybe you are someone who just collects vintage S type things and you want something to fill out that room in your house. I hate to say it because I think guitars should be played, but they're not bad wall art either. So, but that's it. That's today's episode. Dan Electro. What was next week's? Next week's, we're not open next week. It's the July 4th episode.
Yeah, it's your
So
it's your special.
Yeah, I'll have something pre-recorded and up online as a premiere, so it'll still air at 5 o'clock. So if you happen to be home, you'll be able to watch that. And then on the 11th, I still don't know if I'm a part of it or not, but Keith will be doing an all EVH episode. Be prepared for that one to run a little long. I'm guessing that one might have some length to it. Sorry, let me do this way. So if you it'll still start at 5, but I'm thinking that might be like a 5:30, 5:40ish episode. Like, depends, you know. The man can talk EVH. He can play some EVH, I guess. So we'll see how long that goes. Well, thanks for tuning in. Got your little mini history lesson about Dan Electro guitars. You learned about my caffeine intake and how I keep screwing up all kinds of words today.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was early on. So if you're still here, congratulations. We got a good look at what Dan Electro looks like and what they offer as far as everything from bass to electric to even sitars. They even make an acoustic called the Convertible. So thanks for tuning in. I'm Jack.
I'm Jake.
Oh, that also occurred to me that all these times when I've pointed at you and you say your name, Instagram's just like, why does he keep pointing that way?
Because
It's because Jake's sitting over there.
You're pointing at
man.
chat.
My whole world is backwards right now. We'll see you later. This is live at 5 at Island Music Company.
See you.